CBSN, CBS plus N as in news.
And we're following a developing story at this hour.
Or N as in right now. Or newest video.
You can see the security.
Or network of global reporters. Or never worrying about credibility or trust. CBSN, online, on your connected TV, or any mobile device. Anywhere, anytime. CBSN, CBS News, always on.
We begin with a look at your headlines.
This is locker room talk.
I take responsibility for using a personal email account.
Who do you think won this debate?
Welcome to the first and only vice presidential debate.
And hi, everyone. I'm Josh Elliott. We are following breaking news.
I'm going to take you inside the apartment. It's going to be raw.
This is what it's like covering a story here in China.
We do have some periscopes that people have been putting out on social media.
We'll be showing you tweets and real-time data on your screen. Check out this last nugget here tonight from our friends at Twitter.
Our coverage continues on CBSNews.com with in-depth articles and original video reports.
When I hear the name Donald Trump, it's not so much what I think, it's what I feel.
This is Trump's only opportunity to try and reconcile what he said.
CBSN has partnered with Instagram to bring those stories to you live on the air.
Dun, 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 ba-da-bum, dun, dun, dun.
8 by 12 4-bit room. I'm a man of means by no means. King of the road.
For that video, was that cool or what? That was kind of different to see. All right, well, without further ado, we're going to have our fireside chat right now here at the Live Fronts in New York City with CBS Interactive about editorial control in the live streaming era. We have both Marc DeBevoise and Josh Elliott. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
All right. So I think we're going to do something a little different than most people have here. We're going to interview ourselves. So Josh gets to do this for a living, I don't. So we're going to flip the script on him a little bit here at the beginning. And I'm going to ask him a set of questions about what it's like to been like to launch and work with us on CBSN. It's a digital streaming network, as you just saw, that we launched. We just talked about it. It's our second birthday. It was about 19 days ago.
Happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday, CBSN. And we're just going to talk about what it's like to be live 24/7 on that digital network and what it's meant, for us and for the industry. So I'll start, Josh. And I think a lot of people here know you, and you have this broad background in sports and in news. Been a journalist for a very long time, and this is really the first foray you've had into pure digital, right? You've been on TV in some incredibly large audiences. Now you're playing to a new and growing audience. What does that mean? What's the difference for you and sort of how you approach it? Or is there no difference? And just curious how you feel about it.
I feel like the journalism's always going to be the same. And it's interesting because it is the first question you'll get is, what about the journalism changes? And the very simple answer is nothing. And if you are allowing, frankly, for your delivery system in how you approach a story and how you present a story and how you report a story, you're compromising yourself in a way that becomes, I feel like, a Rubicon you can't quite cross back over. You have to be underpinned by the same fundamentals of journalism or you're kind of dead in the water. It inspires a lot of different conversations. I find that a lot of people who come on the show, a lot of the people whom I interview are fascinated by the delivery system. I didn't know what a Roku was until I joined the team. The fact that, an Xbox sitting in a house is now where you can get news, and not just any news, and not like if you get out and pump gas and there's like the 30 seconds of news. It's CBS News. I have been struck by how nimble it is. That I think it's the best in a way. It's the best iteration of the gold standard of journalism in that certainly at this very specific point in time, this inflection point, as a presidential candidate may have made news in the time I've been answering this question. We're there. We are there. And the ability to turn it around and treat it properly, lend it perspective, but deliver it across all platforms in ways that I literally don't understand. It's great.
And do you think it feels like, you've done a lot of different types of television journalism. Does it feel more like one thing than another? Does it feel like morning TV? Does it feel like sports? Or, I think a lot of people in this audience are saying, hey, we're going to shoot 30-second clips and throw them up, and that's going to be news. And it is today, but that's not exactly what we're doing. And I'm curious if it feels more like some other form of TV that we've, regurgitated or reinvented.
I feel, in just drawing on my experiences, this feels probably closest to my experience at ESPN, which was really talented people who are able to generate a tremendous amount of high quality content. And that's a word that I'll always sort of, journalism is the way I will always look at this. But a place that understands that it needs to be nimble, it needs to be ahead, it needs to see things and what they can be rather than react. There was, my time spent at ESPN, the relentlessly thrilling thing about it was every day you were proactive. That's how every day at work now feels. There's always a moment in my day where we're about to do something and I find myself thinking, we can do that? Wow. And it's been, and again, when it's framed by CBS News, where the greats walk the halls, it's the best of both.
So speaking of things we're not sure we should be doing, the political coverage this year.
Yeah.
It's been, someone asked me this question, I actually think it was, where's Janine? She's here somewhere from Ad Age. I think she asked me this question. What does it feel like in the coverage? And I remarked that it felt like the Showtime show, The Circus, which is actually about this year's election, and it totally feels like that. But I'd be curious, now you're on this new platform, it is 24/7, it's always on. Does it change the way that you cover something as different as this election, or do you think it's, or is it the same? Does it impact the way that you would cover something that's been this, up and down and all over the place?
Well, what's interesting is to be woven into the narrative, whether we collectively, we the media, like it or not. You've heard the word unprecedented attached in any number of ways, but specifically, I think as it regards us, we have a candidate who largely rode free media to the brink, to the doorstep. And you can't, when something's just a sideshow, let's say, you can choose stylistically, journalistically, whether or not this deserves, or whether or not we should be. You can't not cover a presidential nominee. You can't not do it. And so to have the ability to be there every day, that talk is going to be given, and then this event. In years past, talking to Bob Schieffer, who's covered every election dating back to 1968, who will just tell anybody he runs into in the building, I've never seen anything like this. And it's over and over again. And it's because we haven't.
So you can sing and do a Bob Schieffer.
I can't. My Bob Schieffer kills. But in years past, we wouldn't have taken all 4 of Bob Dole's stump speeches.
Yeah, are we doing a good job? How would you judge us on, and exclude yourself, but the rest of CBS, and how would you say we're doing? And
I feel like, I think we're, good is such a subjective thing. If you watch and you feel as though we've accurately captured what it is happened, then I guess we're doing a good job. Is it relentless, yeah. But when you have a candidate who can speak 4 times in 4 different states in one day and make news every single time he speaks, that's one thing. When you have, meanwhile, another candidate whose unfavorables near as historic as her rival stem in large part from things that need to be parsed with the finest of fine-tooth combs. We have a political unit, meanwhile, that every day WikiLeaks does the dump. They let you know it just dumped, and then hours later they come back and they have, I mean, they are digging into policy. So it's interesting, right? You have on one hand a candidate who remains proud to this day of his absolute lack of experience in the political sphere, and another candidate who, for everything we've learned, and there are things that are damning in those emails, it seems though that the consistent thing we see is a candidate who knows just how close they can get, who knows just what sort of fringe they can exist in. And they are at the end. I mean, that spectrum is so wide. So I almost feel like you need a CBSN to be covered.
Well, I was going to ask that question. Oddly, we compete in a space between television, right, yeah, the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world, and the internet, which is, you know, people like us, but also very different news providers. I think, you know, this conference is probably more about how's the internet doing, how are we competing with the rest of the internet on that, let's call that the story of the year, obviously. Do you think, I'd be curious your judgment on how you think that's playing out on other platforms rather than CBSN.
I feel like, in essence, I feel like what you're asking, even if you don't intend to ask it, is in terms of equivalency. Are we giving, yep, is there a balance? Are we covering the totality of the election? Are we falling prey to the more you can literally have Trump on TV, the better it is for every bottom line? Look, right.
And is everybody else?
And so I feel like the internet,
you probably don't have time to watch everybody else.
But you know, I feel like, you know, and I do, you know, the monitors are on everywhere. I feel as though we do the best we can. But look, you know, it's actually interesting. You know, you could argue Donald Trump could be running a much better campaign if he prosecuted the case against his rival. But when he refuses to do it, you'll then hear us critiqued by Trump campaign staffers for not doing it. But we need to explain to them, in a way, if he would stop threatening to sue accusers in every single stump speech, we could actually, it's interesting. We talked about this. It was during the Democratic National Convention, and historically, traditionally, the other side goes dark during the convention, during those 4 days. Day one of the Democratic National Convention, Donald Trump gives an hour-long press conference where he invites Russia, and specifically Vladimir Putin, to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. And however jokingly, however in jest, words matter. And I said, you know, so in a traditional newscast, that's 23 minutes. You're going to have to do a story about that today. So now that's 2 or 3 minutes gone. When you look at it in that way, are we doing a good job? I hope we are. The internet, the boundless nature of the internet allows it theoretically to do a better job. Yeah. But, you know, the great thing about CBSN is if we are if we're a wheel made up of spokes, we can change our spokes as often as they need to be changed. The wheel has never been fresher on CBSN than it is today.
So this is now in our second year. We've integrated a lot of other, let's call it media technologies. We've used Facebook Live, we've used Instagram Stories, we've used Twitter. We've done a bunch of partnerships to try to push our content out there and you know, push and pull with those partners. As the journalist, as the anchor, is it helpful? Do you think it is hard, easy? I'd be curious to reaction of trying to integrate all of those, I would hate to, there's sort of tech and media partnerships into the story and into what you're trying to tell, you know, the audience.
I always feel, you know, the chasm to bridge there is always don't have the show come to a stop where then where it feels like you're just plugging a partnership. Some have worked better than others.
What's worked better? Don't worry, there's some in the audience.
No, I feel like we're a visual medium. The more visual, and look, and Facebook is so pervasive that there's, so they launched Facebook Work, and that's okay. Yeah. You used to have to hide the fact that you were on Facebook at work. Now, like, nope, we're actually going to make it easier. So we're far down the road from where we once were. I feel like part of the essential impact CBSN can have is the participatory nature in finding us, in incorporating us. If the cord's cut, what next? And we depend on a more active user. That makes those sorts of partnerships exponentially better for us because, frankly, that's where they're going. If you would have asked me when I was a writer at Sports Illustrated, we were just preceded by Snapchat. There's gonna be this thing that's gonna give you your news in 7-second bursts. Okay.
And then disappear.
And then it's gone. But here comes another one, and another one, and another one. But that's evolution. So I feel like we talk about there being the right side of history. That's something that's been invoked a lot in the last few months on a national scale. I think CBSN's existence, and by extension, its partnerships with like-minded companies, is being on the right side of history. It's inarguable.
And do you think that, I'd be curious about those technologies and also just CBSN in general, but the sort of breaking news factor, that's something we've certainly gone after, but I think, the jokes that you see on Saturday Night Live where it's like everything's breaking or, like it's always breaking news. And I'm just curious, have you found that to be different in this medium versus the other, and does it make a difference, right? I mean, in terms of how you approach it, right? That is breaking so much different than the everyday, or does it just become everyday for you as you're going through it?
I mean, when you're working on a network program, at times it can be, a big, beautiful cruise ship, and they're phenomenal. But when you turn them, sometimes they do take a while to turn. We're like little skiffs. So when breaking news happens, you need a CBSN. There's nothing, I've worked at all the places now. I know what happens when news breaks, and the ability to have Major Garrett when not singing, and by the way, that's the danger of a 2-second delay, because he was on it and I was on it. We just were on it in a lag. The time-space continuum foiled us. But when you can mobilize Major Garrett, and all you need to do is get him a DeGero, which I'm told is some fancy, quick acting camera, which I don't need to understand. But when you can have him up there, then all of a sudden what you've done is it's Frankenstein's monster for good. It's the best journalism you could possibly ask for immediately. And then, as it should be, you rest on your journalistic laurels. Then it is all about the journalism again. And I put CBS News and the resources of CBS News, and by extension CBSN, up against anyone.
Well, at least my last question for you, which is, what do you think our voice is going forward? We've done, a couple of years of what I would call it's news wheel, as you brought it up, and I think we've done a pretty decent job. But like, if you have a say, obviously, but your say on where this goes from here, what's that voice of CBSN a year from now? Is it different? Is it the same? Is it, how would you describe it?
I just hope it's smart. I hope it's something that, and this has been my sense at CBS, you can tell, I feel like, when a media company is at times perhaps at odds with itself, when different parts of it don't all hew the same, when different lines are being towed. And it can make for trot out a dusty old idea, a very uncomfortable water cooler. If folks from different shows, let's say, show up at the same time and what'd you guys do today? And maybe that's not something that they're necessarily proud of, or maybe it's not something they necessarily want to discuss, or what have you. I feel like everybody in the building wants it to be smart. And I also feel like it needs to matter. And so I think I feel like it's just getting started. I feel like it's a lot different than it was when I started back in April. Yeah. And, I would love to see everything that we have to give done in a different way. In a way, it's like great divey Mexican, right? There's 7 ingredients. And so it's like, how many different ways do you put them together that taste good? I just feel like we're just getting started, and in ways that they were the right things to do. But to find a place willing to commit like this to news, which I think probably leads me to my first question for you, but for a journalist, and for it's a fuddy-duddy at times, that is an ennobling thing. It's
That's actually all the tweets we get about you. It says fuddy-duddy all the time.
That's it.
That's all they say.
Damn, lose him. But I think it's the best part about where CBSN is right now in its history. That I'll have a much better answer in 6 months. To be a part of those 6 months will be, that's when the getting's good. That's where it's a growth stock. It's ascendant. This is the one that you want to say you bought into now. So.
I agree. All right, so we're gonna flip this. We'll talk a little bit about the business. So I'm gonna subject myself to Josh's questions.
Marc,
hopefully I'll T-ball so I can hit him. No,
I remember when I was at ESPN, for instance, and they said, hey, SportsCenter used to be on 12 hours a day, and it was the same SportsCenter. It was literally like a tape that we just rewound and hit play on, and that turned into a multi-billion-dollar model. When they chose to go live, I had conversations with the corner offices and said, why are you doing this? And they actually said, editorially, it's something we believe in. And I thought for sure that'd be the last time in the business that I would ever see that. And then CBSN came along. So what was the genesis of the idea, and let's be honest, the bet?
Yeah, I think David Rhodes, who's the president of CBS News, and I sat in a room probably, and the idea had already been batted around. Like, should we start something that we could do 24/7 with CBS News? We do 2 shows a day. We have all these resources, 1,000+ people gathering and developing news, and we don't do anything with it for most of the day. And there had been the idea of, do we launch a cable network? Do we get a digital partner? Do we sell it to somebody? There was a lot of, I would not say that the idea started there, but the idea was floating around, but how to execute it. Mm-hmm. What do we do? And when David and I sat down to really talk about it, when I took over the news division 3 years ago, we kind of looked at each other and was like, we're gonna have to find a way to do this simple. And it sounds almost depressing, but we're like, what's the simple, stupid way to do this, right? And the answer is newswheel, right? It's like, what was headline news supposed to be, frankly? And maybe was for a bit and now isn't anymore, or is sort of some of the day, and other parts of the day they're doing shows about murder and entertainment and different things. And maybe that's where we'll evolve to, but we sat there and said, how do we do sort of almost like 880 news here in New York? Like, how do you do that radio newswheel, but in a video fashion? And we looked at each other, we're like, I think we could do that kind of simple. I mean, it's sort of like, get the stuff from broadcast that we can take, shoot our own stuff digitally, put it together, and that's when we realized that just stitching clips together wasn't gonna be engaging enough for the audience, mm-hmm. right? That would just feel like a clip reel. It wouldn't work. We said, you know what, it has to be anchored. It has to be hosted. And that was the big leap, right? Was to actually go out and say, and honestly, you know this, because this is why when we brought you on, is for the first year, we just kind of borrowed staff from wherever we could at CBS News. And frankly, the scheduling got so manic at some point where we were like, we're actually gonna need some dedicated people to do this. So that's when we brought some people in from different parts of the company, and we went and hired Josh and found some great people to really anchor this thing. But that was the key, I think, having it be live anchored, but the same idea of bringing in all that news from all the different divisions. And we realized we could do it with an economic model that didn't break the bank. And we made a bet on the distribution of all the devices, right? Could all these devices, connected TV, mobile, and desktop, drive enough video viewership to make this thing, make some money? And frankly, we built a profitable news venture inside of, within 18 months, we were profitable, on something like that, which is sort of unheard of in the media business.
Were you surprised? What was the biggest unforeseen challenge?
Look, I'd say I was not surprised that we got some viewership. I was enthusiastic. I know I see some of my salespeople out here in the crowd that we were actually able to really sell it robustly. Not that I was surprised that we could sell it, but that we had enough there and enough differentiated stuff from what I thought other competitors would do. And frankly, no other competitors, I think, came in the market with a similar product. They're either authenticated, behind a paywall, which doesn't have the same audience, or they're betting on short form in a way that's not what we're doing. We're betting on live, 24/7 streaming news. Dirty Secret isn't always live, but it's pretty much always live. And so I think the surprise was that others didn't come after us in that space, and that and I would hate to say thank you to a presidential election cycle that's been so controversial, but I think just the election cycle itself has helped us really get our sea legs under us in terms of real volume and how that looks. So.
And interestingly, while yes, we're not as live, we're not 24/7 live.
Yeah.
We are more live now,
Yeah.
where there might have been like, yeah, okay, we've got stuff, nothing's really happening. I cannot remember the last day I was at work where nothing was really happening.
I'd say the first year we went out, we would say, look, we're going to shoot a live show, and then for the next hour, we're going to fill in when there's something to change, but otherwise we'll just run the same show. As Josh is saying, like, we used to do that.
Yeah.
Now we're sort of just keep people going.
Ah, those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the easy time.
Demographics, I think, again, I'm a Luddite when it really does come to a lot of this stuff. So what is it that we're talking about?
Well, I think that's also the other surprising piece was how young it is. And frankly, younger than we ever thought. And I never thought I'd say this. It's almost too young. And not that it's too young, but it's average age is 38. I think about the average age of most cable news networks as 65 plus, sometimes upwards of 70 plus on an average basis. Network newscasts are 60, 65. Our evening news is, I think, 62 average. We're 38 average on CBSN, 70% in the 18 to 49 demo, over 50% millennial, which is amazing, right? That young people actually do give a shit. They care about the news and what's going on in the world, just to deliver it to them on a different device and in a new way. And I think what's having to shift there is, frankly, the advertising community. Hopefully some people we're talking to today, but they've always thought of news as like, well, that's how I reach my 55-year-old customer. And the answer is, no, it's just another form of video in which to reach an audience, and we can target and sell you a demographic of something different. I was in LA last week, and I was watching CBSN in the gym, and I'm riding the bike, and I'm looking at it, and I'm getting Toyota of California, I realized, I'm like, oh my God, they're super targeting my hotel. And it's like, wait, that's us. I was like, so you actually get incredible targeting on digital, incredible look at the demo of what's there, and it really does work. This isn't pitching you sort of vague demographic stats. We have great detail on what the users are doing.
And it seems like, I guess, in terms of advertising, that's actually the best part. Having been a part of a typical morning show, for instance, a general interest, like let's get everybody into the tent. That's a near impossible thing to advertise to. And so
Yep.
I suppose in a way this is weaponized journalism in the best way.
Well, in the best way, and I think for us as a company, CBS, but also CBS Interactive, where we have 25 different brands covering a lot of different areas, the ability to stitch in a CNET tech segment or an Entertainment Tonight entertainment segment or a CBS Sports segment, it allows us to also hyper-target the type of advertising and content we can deliver for advertisers. So we did some Olympic specials for certain advertisers this summer with CBS Sports. We do probably a Tech Today minute, 3-4 times a week, to cover with CNET. And so that ability to cross-sell and cross-deliver, for different demographics around certain pieces. And look, it's not all about just the live, right? Live is 60 to 70% of the viewing, but the other 34% is the VOD of that live segment, then cut and spread out over the all across the internet. We use all of our distribution partners, YouTube and MSN and all the folks that we partner with to get that content out there far and wide. So whether it's custom content or other, we're delivering that. And frankly, what we found is you know, the hardcore breaking serious news is going to get watched live, and that's what you can have to. And the softer stuff, I mean, I remember like it was like a 100-pound cookie or something like that, and that thing was like a huge traffic driver like last August, and you're like, well, that was all YouTube, right? Or on CBSNews.com, you'll have a spike around, you know, some other, you know, feel-good story. So it's a mix of stuff that really does drive it, you know, again, for different demographics and advertisers.
So what have the, same question for you, what have those partnerships meant for the business? And how have they framed decisions that you've made?
I think this election season's been a great way to test. Yeah. We have tested, we've worked with Twitter, we've worked with Facebook, Instagram. Folks from Telescope are here, helped us get our video out there on Instagram. And it's sort of looking at how people react to those. And I think what we found is each has its kind of own lane right now. You know, I mean, Twitter's been great for data, as Steve Shigaris is talking about candidates and who's reacting, right? It's very good in that live moment. Instagram was really good at getting sort of user feedback as we're out on the campaign trail with our digital journalists going out and covering each of those stops. And so I think we're pushing and pulling in the right ways and playing. I don't think we've solved anything. I don't think we've found this magic bullet like, oh, news is going to be told this way. And I wrote an article for what was well, it might be back now, TV Week magazine, which went defunct after I wrote this article, so I don't know where it is now.
I'm sure you had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it was my fault. Yeah. But that was sort of, fragmentation isn't a dirty word. And I think that's what's happening here, is that there's fragmentation, which sounds really negative, but the idea that there are multiple ways to receive a story, to tell a story, to get information, to deliver information back, you know, the answer is that's all good for the user. Yeah. It may be really hard for us to figure out how to really use it and get scale, but that's what we get paid for.
And if we're going to be the nimble arm of CBS News, it's just various kinds of fuel. You know, every night. I mean, it's I definitely see it as that. And you know, as a writer at Sports Illustrated, in the beginning of the internet era, you know, if you had a great story, I can't tell you how many stories I had, notebooks that I could have just burned for heat because the team lost, and there was nowhere for that information to go. The idea now, it's like, it's the buffalo on the Great Plains. Like, nothing goes to waste, every last bit. And so, yeah, as you find the alchemy has, you know, it's.
And I'm sure you guys have gone through this a lot today. It'll change.
Yeah.
It'll change again next year. It'll change again the year after, and that's actually the new constant is change, right?
Okay, so then and all of that change, all the rivers will flow back to monetization, and I know that.
Sound like less.
I know that
was good.
I know that I can flip open my laptop and type in CBSNews.com, and you know, there I am. How does that? Where to go from there?
Yeah, look, I think we purposely launched CBSN as an advertising medium. We wanted it to be free. I think this sounds very cheesy, but I think the news wanted to be free, right? There was enough free sources out there that you could go get it, but nobody was doing it like a television network without you having to pay your cable operator or some other way. So, and I think a lot of folks dabbled in video in the ways that were maybe right for the time, but very limited in terms of sort of live and constant. And so by making that investment, I think now we have an audience size that enables us to monetize it in a way that makes a ton of sense. And, you know, we were talking before, I worry about growth and I worry about, you know, what's the next trick? But I think the distribution is there to reap that monetization, and it's only going to get stronger. I mean, literally, you know, we do not have demographic measurement right now against connected TV devices, right? And we're all sitting here saying, like, when's that coming? When that comes, even better for monetization. When those devices all ship this Christmas, and everybody, you know, there's a new player now with Leco and others come into the marketplace, it's going to be interesting to see where these new devices and other things go. It's going to be in your car, right? We're not seeing a whole ton of that viewership now, but that's where that's headed. And there's millions and millions of commuters every day who are not able to view it on their phone and hopefully won't while they're driving.
Yeah.
But you know, I think there's a great growth opportunity, and I think that will come back to, is there advertiser interest? And if we can deliver a great product with a great audience, I do have to have faith that, you know, sort of Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. So
you knew what you hoped for 2 years ago. Same last question then. What's, you know, what do you want? What do you want The Voice to be? What do you want somebody thinking when they think, got to go to CBSN?
Yeah, look, I think from a user perspective, look, smart is, I definitely want it to be smart. And I think, look, under Rhodes' leadership at News, I think we've done that across the shows.
And the one thing I didn't say too is that, because I think that's the hardest thing to do. I think that's you can be many things, but if you haven't established that, if you don't have that, that's the one thing you can't go out and sort of get to later.
Well, and I'd say the thing I hope we're able to reinvent in the next year is not, I think we're great at the wheel and we're great at live and breaking, and I think we've figured out how to cover a political election, but that next trick I think is going to be about programming the hours in a way that isn't, I've watched cable news over the last 20 years and see where it's headed, and I like parts and I don't like parts. And I want to, hopefully we can head towards a smarter view of original programming that builds out on that 24/7 stream, that still engages that younger audience in a deep, deep way and doesn't lose our roots of sort of, you're coming to us because we're on and we're 24/7 and we're the gold standard and we're the nimble arm of CBS. But, does get a little bit more creative in terms of, the stories that we're able to tell. That maybe others haven't been able to find.
Yeah, I mean, when you have that foundation, the house you build on top of it can be whatever it is you want.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes left, and we're happy to take questions from the audience, or we can just keep riffing, on each other. But if anybody has any thoughts, questions, wants to spike me to something, Dave.
Audiences choose the platforms that they want to receive news on, right? And in some ways, choose more and more of the specific voices, more polarized voices. Do you, as a journalist, in an era and on a platform like this, ever feel more pressure, or you believe that there would be more pressure in general to insert more aggressive point of view or speak point of view? Is that something you guys think about editorially?
I suppose for the question essentially was in a time of increasing polarization and the widening, I suppose, of the spectrum, how far the ends can be from one another, how much pressure do we feel and to either take a stand or figure out a way to exist in it. I feel no pressure to have a more aggressive opinion. I feel all the pressure to make sure that we are presenting the prevailing viewpoints that inform the story. I hope everything I do is apolitical, but journalistically sound. I'll never feel like it's my job to take a stand. The idea of being the media arm of a political party, for instance, is not something that I would ever want to be a part of, nor is it something I feel like people should aspire to. But presenting all the viewpoints, I think, is. And I feel like, I think about our Democratic strategists and Republican strategists, for instance, that we've had on. They have been just collectively aces. I cannot, as much information and as much as we can parse on the air, boy, in commercial breaks and when we're setting up, there's stuff we just can't get to that is endlessly fascinating. And so I think giving them a voice in this time in our history is important. I would say this. Libertarians are people too. I feel like we should make a better, we should reach out to and not be pop quizzing Gary Johnson, but let's go get somebody who speaks for the party.
But that Gary Johnson one is a great one. I think you and the other folks on our air, I guess we call it, or our digits, should come up with a term for that. Do a fantastic job of, you don't have to express your opinion, but you do have to, and you do this, call out when you see something
100%.
incorrect. I mean, I think Schieffer did it the other day with the strategists on air, and you guys do it all the time. It's sort of like, that's how you shape that story. And it is, you don't have to have, it's not expressing your own opinion, it's calling out the opinions people are expressing for their either factual validity or invalidity.
And the polarization has obviously gone to such an exponentially greater level in the season that we are now in, to the point where if I live tweet a debate, and I quite literally write Trump, quotation mark, what he said, end quotes, the rancor that comes back at me, how can you, from both sides, and I'm quoting him. I feel like it's my duty to not decide for you. It's my duty to dig as deeply as I can in the time I'm given, and hopefully have given as much dimension and life to a story or an interview subject as I possibly can. And knowing full well that if somebody wants to go hear that which they already believe, then maybe they're not gonna come to us. But I truly feel like, and this is something I really have learned a lot more about since coming to CBSN, especially as it regards, say, millennials. The fact that, the number one thing with them, I mean, they smell a sale. They are looking for authenticity. And I think...
And authenticity, in our word, is a business strategy too, right? For both the user and the advertiser, right? We think, yes, you might get a different user base if you were leaning one way, but it's going to be challenging to have all of the people and all of the advertiser base view you in the way that we want to be viewed.
Yeah.
I think is that authenticity is not just the way we live and it's the value we believe in, but that integrity is also a business strategy.
Yeah, they just want to, they want to believe that you either believe it, or in this case, I think they want to believe that you don't have I don't have a stake in it. And so that's what I fight. And let's be honest, with both major party candidates, let alone, I've interviewed Gary Johnson 3 times. I interviewed Jill Stein once. There are times where you just find yourself even in the moment thinking like I'm gonna bite through my tongue. I'm gonna bite it off. But that's not my job.
I think every broadcast network had an opportunity during the presidential and vice presidential debates to pick who their anchor was going to be, and it was an amazing moment in time that CBS News selected a CBSN anchor to host the vice presidential debates. I wanted to know if you could maybe share kind of what was happening behind the scenes from a business perspective as to how that moment happened.
Well, so CBS didn't select, CBS did not put a lane forward to be chosen. It was the commission chooses. And in fact, a great funny story, Elaine sees a number, she doesn't recognize, she doesn't answer it. She sees it call again, she doesn't answer it. She finally answers it. And it's a woman whom the voice she doesn't recognize saying, "Hi, I'm calling from the commission and we're wondering if you'd perhaps consider hosting a vice presidential debate for us." And the first thing she said, because she's Filipina, the first thing she said was, I'm not Hispanic, right? So, Elaine Quijano. So it was, but it was, I feel like, and let me just say for my colleague, I thought she did a remarkable job, and I could not have been prouder to know her as a colleague and a friend. And on behalf of, I've worked with or know everyone who did all of those, and know them all as to be great, fine people. And that is as thankless a job as you could ever want. And the fact that it simultaneously is the height of personal achievement in one's career. You are to borrow a sports idea, they say a lot about coaches, basically they're hired to be fired. You are, hey, I get to moderate a debate in this political climate. Hey, I get to ensure that 50% of the country hates me literally every moment of this 90 minutes. But we were very proud. We were incredibly proud
She did a fantastic job in what was an incredibly difficult moment, so we were really proud of.
And I think it spoke to
and for all, I mean, I think Chris Wallace and I think Lester Holt and I think everybody who was involved in those did a tremendous job, and those were very tough this year. But I think they all did great, and we were really proud to have the first digital person coming out of a digital network to have that honor.
And I do want to say I was just very proud too, because it really did. I think that choice in part stemmed from CBSN's work during the conventions. And Bob Schieffer, who was sitting there telling war stories for a week in Cleveland and a week in Philadelphia, saying, back in the day, networks I would have been in this town doing stories about the stage for a week. Like, this is how we used to do it. And to have been that vital and to have done the numbers that we did for those 2 remarkable weeks, frankly, in recent American history, was quite something. And I truly believe that call doesn't get made if CBSN had stepped on itself for those 2 weeks. So that was to be a part of it, even though, being live, doing anything in an 8th hour of a day is like kind of terrifying, because I don't know what I just said at times. But, it was, when called upon, I thought we really answered it. And Elaine being asked to moderate was proof positive.
So we're out of time. I want to thank Braved Ventures and Roker Media for the opportunity, and we're really happy to have been here. So thanks, everybody.
For sure.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate the panel. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome panel, great time from both of those guys. Look, we have an awesome panel that's getting ready to come up in just a second. This one's really gonna be great. It's all about driving audience growth